Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you again for attending our brown bag sessions. Today's topic will be parks and recreation facilities. Our presenters are from the Parks and Recreation Department. I appreciate and really want to thank them for dedicate time to present today and enlightening us with this very interesting topic. A couple of remarks, everyone. This is our last session for this cycle. We will be back in September. We will start another cycle of brown bag sessions the second Tuesday of September, which is, I think, the 8th after Labor Day. We will have another round of topics that you will receive in your emails if you are registered to attend, to receive any communications from the planning department. And last thing I want to remind everyone is that this session is eligible for 1 AICP credit. So if you are AICP member, you can totally claim 1 credit. I'm going to share the number for this session in the chat so you can introduce it in your AAPA website. With no further ado, Ivy, the floor is yours. Thank you again for being here with us today, and take it over.
Thank you, Natalia. My name is Ivy Thompson, and I'm with the Park Planning and Environmental Stewardship with the Parks and Recreation Department, Prince George's County. We are pleased to present to you the updated Parks and Recreation Facilities Design Guideline, 2 parts. Today, we are highlighting trails, like the zoning ordinance, the landscape manual, and the subdivision regulations. These guidelines provide 21st century standards developers constructing parks and recreation facilities in Prince George's County. This document is meant to be a living document with revisions occurring biennially to remain current for the staff and the development community. The Park and Recreation Facilities Design Guidelines are a legal requirement of Subdivision Regulation 244507B2. The Parks and Recreation Facilities Design Guidelines is a supportive tool for the development community and provides implementation consistency for public and private park and recreation facilities constructed by developers. For example, private recreation facilities are reviewed by the Planning Department, urban design staff, while public recreation facilities constructed by developers are overseen by the Department of Parks and Recreation staff. This document facilitates design consistency for those reviews. Parks and recreation facilities are the culmination of overlapping programs, regulations, and documents. The development of parks requires careful consideration of our department funding sources, as well as zoning, subdivision, and landscape regulations. This presentation and document focuses on facilities constructed on developer lands. Formula 2040 provided the urban park typology for open space development in the county. Ownership and management of these spaces varies from municipal agencies, private landowners, public and quasi-public agencies. The guidelines identify 5 classifications of parks prevalent in the county. Community parks and neighborhood parks are most common parks outside of the Beltway. Within the Beltway are smaller urban parks, greenways, and linear parks that generally align with our trails and undeveloped parks. As previously noted, the Planning Department reviews private recreation facilities, and the Department of Parks reviews public recreation facilities. The design guidelines include common elements and standards that provide consistency for recreation amenities and facilities that are built within Prince George's County. The guidelines address site-related details that are applicable to M-NCPPC specific sports or national standards. As development occurs and activity preferences of new and current residents evolve, so too shall the design guidelines. And with that, Bob Patton, our Trails Manager, is going to present the Trails portion of the design guideline.
Thank you very much, Ivy. I am excited to present our trails portion, which in the recent update of the guidelines has been expanded and brought up to speed significantly. The important thing with trail design is to understand the development process and what sets the stage for it, to understand the subdivision regulations and the zoning code that speaks about bike and pedestrian circulation and achieving bike and pedestrian transportation and recreation adequacy. And that is the basis for the trail development planning process and design guidelines. The Parks Department did a strategic trails plan that was endorsed by the Planning Board in 2018. And that strategic trails plan has a number of things that it recommends for the master plan of transportation, which is still in the process of being updated and will move toward adoption in future months. The key thing that the Strategic Trails Plan offered was some modified classifications for what we use the term trails. More specifically, it's important to understand shared use paths, which is the term for paved bike and pedestrian facilities that is used across the country as a common reference with transportation agencies, park agencies, and but not so much the public yet. So our classification system that we have in Prince George's involves primary shared use paths and secondary shared use paths. And in our Parks Department system of what we call trails, we also have loop trails in parks. Most of these are paved paths of fairly short distances. And we also have an extensive natural surface trail system. So to help you understand our system in Prince George's County as it exists today, things that are already built, we have about 21 Stream Valley Greenways, which are shared use paths that are paved pathways. We have a couple of rail trails, and we have a few locations which are not in the Parks Department per se, where we have linear park corridors that are along arterial roadways. The secondary classification for shared use paths is really to have a place to understand everything that relates to the primary system. And that includes links to the primary system that connect the major trail system with the neighborhoods through which it passes. It also includes a variety of kind of standalone trail facilities that connect different neighborhoods or special facilities, but are not necessarily part of a large network. It also includes residential path networks, and these are usually multiple paths that connect through a residential development, but they may or may not connect into the wider primary system. And then, of course, standard side paths, which don't really provide a park-like experience, but provide an off-road experience for bicyclists and pedestrians. These are primarily built to ensure safer transportation accommodation for bicyclists and pedestrians. In the design guidelines, we have articulated what was developed in the strategic trails plan, this classification system to help developers, the planning staff, everybody in the county begin to understand a difference between primary shared use paths and secondary shared use paths. And really the key difference is that our primary system fully serves both transportation and recreation experience. And the secondary system is primarily something that provides either exclusive recreational experience like paved loop paths, or it includes exclusive transportation accommodations like shared use paths along roadways, but without that kind of park-like experience. So within the Parks Department, we have these paved loop paths in addition to both primary and secondary shared use paths. But we also have natural surface trails, meaning that they're dirt paths or gravel paths that are predominantly in our natural areas in our regional park system. Because the park system is so huge and because we have so many facilities, we also have paths and sidewalks throughout our building complexes and our grounds and parking lot areas that connect everybody together. So what I want to talk about today in specifics is what's in the design guidelines, which includes some guidance about planning for shared use paths, as well as more specific design guidance. It's important for developers to know, as well as others to know, that a lot of issues are going to be raised in the planning thinking about shared use paths. How the path will affect the natural environment, how the path is to relate to the built environment, its proximity to the built environment, as well as its service for the built environment, because they will provide transportation. Accessibility or compliance with ADA, facility classification, which I've just discussed. Path width is very important, and then who will operate and maintain. These are kind of the general planning categories that it's important to think about early in the development process. And to deal with path width, we have a special tool that's called the Shared Use Path Level of Service Calculator that can be very helpful. I'm not going to go into the details of how that works. It's referenced in the guidelines and it can be accessed online. So those are some of the main things to begin to become aware of. The shared use path system in Prince George's County today is a very extensive system, and there are so many other things that come into play in the planning process. And it's good to just know that these topics will arise. Some of them really get solved in the design process. But we have to think about emergency access and maintenance access. Maintenance, especially for those trails that are going to be passed to the Parks Department to maintain. Drainage and stormwater is critical. Landscaping, presence of utilities, whether there's going to need to be structures, whether there's at-grade intersections, and so on. So the key thing at the early part of the process is to think about what kind of planned or proposed shared use paths exist in, say, the master plan of transportation or the sector plan, the developments proposed to happen within, or a municipality, and to understand what needs to happen in that development to build plan sections of a path that are called for in a master plan, or to connect to existing or plan sections that are in other types of plans. And then the other question to think about as well is what's the relation, what role can a shared use path play within a development? And how should the paths within a development connect to the paths that are that may be, or the development that is bordering that area? And so there are a variety of issues that come to play in trying to plan for an internal path system within a development, especially larger residential and mixed-use developments. There also are some optional features that really come to play only in special situations. These are things that tend to require a larger investment, so they're not always going to be needed or even appropriate in certain developments. But these things include, where do we put trailheads and public parking access, restrooms, waysides, interpretive signage, lighting, security cameras. These are all things that we do have, not on all of the trails in the park system, but we do have on select trails. And those considerations may come to play for certain developments. I wanted to give an example, not go into the details, but we have been reviewing Hyde Landing development and two associated developments, the Grove at Hyde Landing, which is this area up here, and the Edlin development. These are happening on Piscataway Road out near Casca Regional Park. And the developer, landscape architect working for that developer out there, looked at the master plan of trails and engaged with our planning, trail planning staff at the Parks Department, began to look at all the different shared use path system issues and started to develop alignments and discuss the various issues. And we're still in that process, but this just gives you an example. All of these large colored lines and markings on this page of their development proposal started to reference different issues related to recreational trails as well as the paved shared use path system. Our shared use path system in Prince George's County has a lot of different owners, and shared use paths increasingly need to cross a variety of public or semi-public properties in order to maintain continuity. So it's good for people to understand that there's going to be a lot of people that have to be consulted with in the process of planning and developing a shared use path. And for developers who are going to be building these facilities as part of their development contribution to the public, these things will often come into play. Related to that is the whole question of maintenance responsibilities. And while the Park Planning Commission has a lot, the HOAs in Prince George's County have a lot of shared use path on their property that they maintain or property management companies maintain. And then we have stuff in the transportation system, in national parks, state parks, and even municipalities have some responsibilities for trails. So jumping into the design process, our design guidelines provide to developers more specific details to help them understand and to use in their plan sets that go through the submittals and the review process. And key things to draw upon for primary shared use paths, as I said at the beginning, is understanding corridor width, treadway width, pavement cross sections, shoulder and buffer width. These are key things that have to be thought about both at the planning level and then how they play out in the design process. We also are open and are beginning to use in Prince George's County more innovative designs, meaning essentially protected bike lanes and sidewalks or protected trails where parts of the street system are actually provided dedicated space for safe biking and walking. And so we have some things about that in the design guidelines. Secondary shared use paths are similar to primary, but really generally the key thing for design for these is they use the minimum requirements for path width, for corridor width, for buffers, and for the specific dimensions of a path. So sometimes shared use paths that are just connecting to the larger system often can be done at less than 10 feet so that we're not overdoing the amount of additional asphalt we're adding into our natural environment and our drainage system. We provide details to deal with the pavement, the construction of the cross section of the pavement, and some alternatives to that, understanding geometric design issues, clearances to the side and over the top, and also understanding how to design for ADA accessibility based upon the national federal ADA guidelines for shared use paths, which generally fall in the category of ADA access on the public right of way. We also have details about detailed things like fencing and furniture along trails. An important one is how do we control access and keep motor vehicles off of our trails and keep them safe just for pedestrians and bicyclists. And we're developing some new ways of doing that. Operational signage for shared use paths is important, and we use a manual that was developed for Montgomery County, as well as the MUTCD, and that their manual is based on that. Bridges and boardwalks is another area where we have some specific guidelines, and we build on the national guidelines that are set by the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, especially for bridges. Intersections are something that design features for intersections are really evolving in the world of transportation. And so we have some guidance about that and examples of the new kinds of approaches to that. The guidelines have a whole set of these detail sheets that are utilized in plan sets that developers create and take through the review and approval process. And the different detail sheets that may be useful for developers are primarily in sections D through H. We have a special path section, then about pavement, furniture, and drainage and stormwater design. I am going to pass it now over to JT, who is going to talk to you about a new tool that we have developed for the public to use, but it can be useful in the development process, that talks about how to find the trails in Prince George's County.
Thanks, Bob. We're going to pivot and do a little fun thing for a little bit, talk about our all-new Trail Finder tool. When we're done with that, we will come back and we'll have time for discussion with Bob and Ivy and myself on all of the above. So hopefully everybody can see my screen. And in the chat box, you can follow along at home because this thing works really well on either your home PC, office PC, or on your phone. It's super mobile friendly. It almost looks like an app. So I'm John Thomas. I go by JT. I'm a planning supervisor in the Park Planning and Environmental Stewardship Division at the Parks and Recreation Department. And I am responsible for working with our fabulous trails team, and department-wide, we've got folks in the department working on trails every day. And it was really a team effort that created this new one-stop shop for a single source of truth for all things trails in the county. So I'm going to do a little tour, and like I said, you can follow along. So this, when you default and click on the link, you'll have an option to go to full screen version right up top here. So we're going to make this a little bit bigger for everyone. And what this does is three different types of trails that Bob talked about. I'm going to click on change trail type. And this is where I like to start when I get into the Trail Finder application. And we can look and learn all about shared use paths. We can learn all about woodland and natural surface trails, and we can learn all about loop trails all at this one at a time. So I'm going to give you a tour of each and give you some examples of what you can see when you play with this thing. So let's go to shared use paths first. And you can sort alphabetically here, clicking on A to Z. But what I like to do is click on these two little arrows right here. And it'll give you a ability to sort longest to shortest or shortest to longest. So I'm going to go and sort by the longest trails. And this is individual trails. It's not the entire network of length. If you looked at a network of length, some of them are 25 miles plus, like Anacostia River Trail System, etc. But this will give you the longest link. And a little trivia, the longest individual links, the two are Little Paint Branch Trail and the WB&A Trail at 7.29 and 7.21. So let's click and find out what that trail looks like. So every single one of these trails on the left here, you can click on the photo and you get a big, beautiful photo. Again, thanks to our partners at the divisions that helped with these photos. And then we're going to go back here. We can X out that photo. And then we want to find out more information. So let's go to Henson Creek Trail and click more information. Then it gives you the photo, a zoom of the photo, and a little description. And if you're following along at home or on my screen, as we go and click on more information, the big map in the sky on the right of the screen is actually zooming to the trail and the localized trail map here. So it's a pretty smart system. So it's zooming around. You can see right here on the right as we go. And when you close that window, you're automatically on that screen. So let's go back to Henson Creek. And if you want to find out how to get to this trail, we're going to click right here on the word that says directions. And it will open up a Google Map window. And it defaults to the driving directions. But if you want to walk, it's giving me directions from here in Largo out to the trail out there. If you want to walk to the trail, it's going to be 4 hours from here. If you want to ride your bike, it'll give you biking directions, etc. So pretty cool functionality there. The last thing on the functionality of each one is if you see this little tiny dot, 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 and hover over that, it says Share Trail Finder. You can do this from any spot. So the cool thing about the sharing Trail Finder is if you click on Share Trail Finder and then hit copy, and then we're going to go in our little browser and we're going to hit paste. And it will give you, it should take you straight to the individual trail that you shared. So it's not just sharing the entire Trail Finder link as a whole. You can actually share the trail that you're standing at or the trail that you're at home or at work, and you say, hey, I'm going to share you information about this trail, and it'll go straight to that map. So pretty cool stuff. So again, to refresh on natural surface trail or on shared use paths, A to Z, longest to shortest. You can also search by trail name here. We'll go Henson Creek Trail and hit enter, and it'll go straight to that one. And if you close back, so let's go and change trail type again. And we're going to go to woodland trails or the natural surface trails, and we'll close that window. And if you see the map, the large map change, you can actually zoom in as well here, and you can actually click on this. We'll come back to that. But we're going to be able to do the same thing. This one adds a park function. So say you're in Watkins Regional Park. You can go and click on Watkins Regional Park, and you can, when you go here and change to trails, two different ways to search. So you can search by park, and then it'll zoom in, and you can click on the individual trails here. So it should work. There we go. Spice Bush Trail, Beaver Pond Trail, etc. And then if you want to find a picture of that trail, again, you can click on the picture and then X out that. You can click on more information, and it'll give you more information just about that little individual trail. You can also do the same directional function there and give directions specifically to that Beaver Pond Trail out in Watkins Regional Park. And close that window. You can do the same thing here. Say you're looking for, I want to have a long natural surface trail. We can go back and sort by longest. And sort by night. It saved my Beaver Pond Trail, but actually the longest is the yellow trail out in Patuxent River Park out here. So back and forth for natural surface parks and trails, the same sharing function works. So if we go more information here, close, and we want to share Patuxent River Park, same thing. It'll send you this link that you copy from this little pop-up. We'll share anybody, you can share directions straight to, or more information straight to that Patuxent River Trail Park. So really great functionality, easy to use. You can even spend the afternoon doing a virtual tour of all the pictures and learn about every single one just by clicking on more information. Some of these have embedded PDFs maps as well. So occasionally you'll find some, and we'll populate more as we're going forward, especially some of the longer shared use paths have a separate PDF map as well that you can download. Let's go up, and last but not least, we're going to talk about loop trails. So we'll close that. Look at all the loop trails in those counties. Every single one of the purple diamonds here is a loop trail. And these range from 2 2/3, the longest loop trail out at Lake Artemisia, just east of University of Maryland. We can go to the shortest one, and it'll show all the 1/8 mile loops. So if you have a local loop in your local neighborhood park, you can click there and find out more information. Not as many pictures on the loop trails, but it's still fun, and it's good for exercise and finding your closest trail. And the nice thing here is we can go in, and we're trying to find a loop trail nearby. We can click on the individual links there, and I'll zoom in and find, hey, here's our Lincoln Vista Trail. The same functionality works with respect to sharing here. So let us sort back to longest. To refresh and close out here, we're going to go back, pick your favorite trail type. It resets all the trail types of shared use paths, woodland trails, or loop trails here. So if you get lost in the app, not in the park, if you get lost, you can click on the little the question mark here that says help. And actually, it will give you a little bit of those navigation tools along the way. It'll give you information such as the park police phone number. It'll give you our help desk. If you're out there on the trail and you see an issue, it's got our help desk number. You can pull up this link right here and get all the key phone numbers, etc. If you want to learn about the rules and the etiquettes and safe travel on the trails, you click on the little information icon, and it'll give all of our trail rules as well.
For review and signature.
So somebody needs to mute themselves. But again, to sum up it before we go to discussion and questions, as you know, we're lucky to have one of the best trail systems in the country as far as a county trail system goes. Now we think we have the best app in the country. If you're looking for trail information all along, there's a lot of clone apps out there and web crawling apps that just crawl and support information. We think this is the single source of truth, and it's not something that you have to pay for separate either. If you have feedback, there is an email here as well, trail.finder@pgparks.com. It's still a little bit in beta, so if you find stuff, even there's 1 or 2 broken links out of 1,000 in here as well. If you find one of those, send us an email. And it's really cool and really exciting, and get out and see the trails. So I will stop there. We've got about 20 minutes for discussion and questions. You can ask questions about Trail Finder. You can ask questions about design. And remember, this Trail Finder works really well on your phone. We spent a lot of time creating it to be mobile friendly. In fact, I've turned it into, you can actually bookmark the website on your phone and you can make it look like an app. Pretty cool stuff. So play around with that. Thanks to our staff at Park Planning and Environmental Stewardship and PACE and all the other divisions that took pictures and helped with the mapping, et cetera, and got this up on the web. Thanks to the GIS department, both in Parks and Recreation and in the planning department. The GIS was a big part of this as well. So thanks to everybody who helped us get this out there. And please share the link. It's in the chat box. You can share the link, and now you learned today, hopefully, how to share an individual trail as well. So let me stop there and go back to questions. Natalia, you're gonna do questions.
Yes, I was just asking people to put their questions in the chat. There is one question that says, what was your favorite aspect of this project?
Of the Trail Finder project? If the question is of the Trail Finder project, I think the best part was actually getting the photos, getting out and seeing a lot of this stuff. But really the sharing of the sharing functions we're really excited about. Obviously, I'm excited about all of the above. But the teaming part of it, you know, it really was a team effort to get lots of folks out there. But really getting everything into this system was the fun part. What's the funnest part about trail design, Bob?
Well, I was going to say the funnest part about Trail Finder was working with Sean Atkins, who came to our trails team 2 years ago now and had the skills and the motivation to put this together and to work with the various the people in the planning department and the parks department to contribute to this and make it a team effort. It took a fair amount of work, but Sean has a great sense of our trail system and also of what makes things user-friendly and useful for people in online tools.
We have another question. What kind of challenges did you face with getting people to support or cooperate for such an extensive project? It says, I imagine there might be a lot of friction from authorities, citizens, and some difficult people.
Do that for trail.
Yeah. Well, interestingly enough, in Prince George's County, we often find very little friction coming from the community, coming from elected officials. We have a lot of interest in trails and support for trails amongst the public and throughout the county. Sometimes the things that are most challenging are simply the fact that trails create a new public space where often in areas where everybody, the agencies and the public are already used to that space and how it's used. And they propose changing it slightly. And so we sometimes run into challenges with agencies who are charged to protect their infrastructure and manage their infrastructure. And they may not be aware of how a trail can fit in to what they're responsible for. Sometimes you run into people that just are in a bad mood and they're a naysayer. But most of the time, the challenge is just getting through all the people and processes that are part of the complexity of doing trails in a suburban environment and in an area that's largely already kind of built up or spoken for.
Thank you. We had one question that was answered already, but I want to reiterate. If by any chance your trail or the local trail you know is not shown in the Trail Finder, you please contact our team. in the email is shared in the chat is trail.finder@pgparks.com. So if you have any feedback or additional feedback, that's the email where you want to contact our team. Do you use easements whenever a trail needs to pass through a private property?
Yes, we do. And we also often have to have easements when trails pass through public property, but property that's managed by another public entity. Or utility companies or Metro, which are kind of quasi, they're not really private, but they're specific public agencies for which trails are not their mission. And so the Park and Planning Commission does arrange easements to clarify who has access to this area, that to clarify it is going to be public, who's going to maintain it, and if there's any responsibilities or engagement of that underlying property owner, or if they're fully protected from a legal and liability point of view. The easements help clarify those things.
All right. Do we have any more questions from the audience? It seems like you've been getting a lot of good feedback. People are really pleased with the app. Here, another one. Hi, Bob. As we move forward with refinement on the ethylene project, are there guidelines and threshold for the need for certain provisions along trails for fencing and furniture? Or is that level of design purely dictated on a case-by-case basis?
Yeah, for fencing and furniture is generally on a case-by-case basis. Fencing is generally only required where we need to protect people for safety reasons. Sometimes we use fencing somewhat as a symbolic thing, or sometimes landscaping, to just give people the idea of when and where are you in the public corridor, as opposed to keeping people from going into places that they shouldn't go. And furniture requirements like benches and trash cans, we don't have really strict requirements. Most of the things that we design into trails are based on need and what we do to make trails comfortable, inviting, and work for the users. So our guidelines are not just a matter of formulaic kinds of guidelines. They really are meant to be applied appropriately to achieve the best trail system. And that's why we call them guidelines as opposed to standards or regulations.
There is another question. Is there any, suppose I want to arrange for a community cycling activity. Can I use this Trail Finder data for promotional posters, or is there any restriction for the usage?
Yes, we have a process for a number of our trails when people want to have a public event there to register that request and dialogue with one of our managing divisions to make sure that that can happen safely. We have to coordinate calendar. We have to deal with questions like parking and police security, providing security. How big is your group? And so we have that information. Do we have that yet on the Trail Finder? It may be that we have some of that on websites, but I'm glad that people brought that up, because Prince George's Parks is a very large agency. We have a large county, a lot of parks, and thus a lot of processes for making them work well for the community. So we can probably figure out a way to add links that are needed that will help people interested in a particular facility know whether they need to request and fill out a form to make that a formal type of event. We have to be careful too in terms of using our trail systems to raise money. That is not an across the board no. We actually make the park system and the trail system available for a lot of fundraising events, for bona fide nonprofits, for public, for events that really help with public issues that are important to deal with. So those kind of requests can be made, but we'll have special considerations to dialogue with the sponsors of those events about how we can be of service and be help and be involved in those kind of events.
We have actually a good question. This is, all of them are good. This is interesting to me personally. How is it decided who will maintain an M-NCPPC trail in a housing development?
That is a really good question. Often, as developers develop large housing areas, they determine what is going to be dedicated to the Parks Department. And if they have other open spaces, they determine if a homeowners association, an HOA, is going to be responsible for it, or if there's some other way that they're accommodating that for the future residents. These decisions essentially get made before people move in. Our Parks Department in general takes responsibility for trails when they're going to be on property that's dedicated to be added to the park system. But sometimes we work out special arrangements on a case-by-case basis with certain developments. And we're in the process of trying to make a database of cataloging those arrangements that have been made in the past and keeping track of them and helping our maintenance people know what is ours that we need to take care of. And also sometimes HOAs are not aware that they're actually responsible for trails, especially, you live in a HOA now, and if that trail was built 25 years ago, maybe it didn't get passed on to your HOA leadership organization that you have to take care of the trail. And so we're constantly kind of trying to clarify that stuff as those issues come up.
So those are typically trails that are privately owned but for public use? Is that what we could say for those?
That's right. We are mapping trails in our system that are for public use, even when they're not managed or owned by the Parks Department. And so in the planning process for a residential community, that's when it gets clarified if those trails will be open for public use or if they are going to be kept private. And so that's part of developers meeting the adequacy conditions for providing the larger public contribution. And so sometimes it's a public contribution, but an HOA will be responsible for maintaining it. But it's perfectly legal for somebody who doesn't live there to utilize that trail because it's in a public space and it makes a connection that's important for the broader public to be able to have that connection, like going over to the school or whatnot. So, but those decisions are made about whether they're totally private or they're open to the public, but maintenance is provided by private entities. They're made in that development process, in the development approvals.
And I see a comment that could actually be a kind of a question. It says land trust can also be used for monitoring. Do you use land trusts for monitoring or for, data source?
I'm not familiar with the extent of land trusts that are in.
Hello.
I thought my computer was tied into
We're back.
electricity, but apparently it was not.
Keep talking. Sorry, we lost a computer out of 3 here, so we're back. Bob, you were talking about land trusts.
Yeah, if the person who asked that question maybe knows more, that would be that they could add to their question. It might help, but I may have to refer that one to somebody else.
No problem. We have another question. How do we find if there is an agreement that parks may have within a specific HOA?
So the answer to that one is not really simple. We have to go into the land records and sometimes into what's called the plats. And I tell you, I'm still in the process of learning and understanding all of that. And sometimes we do have a database of legal agreements for the Park and Planning Commission, but there are many, many, many of them. So we have to do some research. What year do we think that might have happened? Or what is the name of the development? Or we have to get clues that can help us search in the different databases to answer that question. Sonia has offered some information here. Sonia's our chief of our division.
No, I apologize. I got called into a call, so I think I know what you're talking about, but I wanted to take this opportunity to say we need help with the maintenance on HOA lands of trails that have been developed as requirements, understanding what enforcement mechanisms the county has to support the long-term maintenance of those facilities that were built as a result of like private rec agreements. We're learning more and more of them are problematic that were built probably in the 90s and the early 2000s that communities haven't gone in and done regular upkeep. They're overgrown, similar to stormwater facilities. And what mechanisms do we have when a lot of times the HOAs haven't put aside sufficient reserves and don't have the expertise? Hopefully I'm on track with what you're talking about. But that's a topic I've had in my parking lot that I would love to partner with planning department staff and legal staff on.
I'm seeing in the chat that a person who asked about land trust referenced the area of Brandywine in the county. And yeah, especially in the southern part of the county and especially for natural surface trails. And in Prince George's, this can often arise in parts of the county where people have historically had access to ride horses on what was, quote, private property. It may have been rural property. And the people themselves who owned the property may have had horses, but they allowed neighbors and people in the area to use it. So the land trust can be a mechanism by which there are arrangements for the preservation and use of that land, but that those arrangements can also deal with monitoring trails, with providing trails, with defining what level of public access there is, and so on. And so it was helpful that the person added some more clues to that. It's something that hasn't happened a lot, but is happening somewhat in the county. And I expect it may happen more in the future in the southern part of the county, where we're still changing from a rural landscape and rural spread out residential properties to more developed areas.
Thank you. We can take one final question if anyone has it. In the meantime, I want to again thank you, our amazing Parks team for this presentation. People are very pleased with the topic, and I cannot agree more. This is our last session for this cycle. We will be back in September, second Tuesday. Again, we will continue every second Tuesday of the month. Stay, check your emails for more information of the upcoming sessions. A little hint, we're gonna open the September session with another parks and recreation related topic. So it will be very entertaining. And don't forget to log in your CM credits if you are AICP planner. Thank you again, everyone. Thank you for our amazing presenters. This was a great event. Have a wonderful rest of the day, everyone. And before you go, just let you know, you are gonna receive a copy of the presentation, and this session is being recorded and is gonna be uploaded in our YouTube channel. You are gonna receive an email with all this information. Thank you again, everyone. And with no further ado, have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.